but it's not just more expensive groceries. It's a financial system where the few protections that are in place for consumers, they would like to take those away too. The 2008 recession was supposed to be a once in a lifetime event. That was all ripped away from me. Getting into compliance was equal parts, I need a job and I have to pay bills and I have to figure that out quick, but also a little bit, I'm kind of sick of this mess. And I've seen more times than I can count where banks have just kind of turning a blind eye to stuff because, hey, this is a whale and we don't want to upset him. The system is broken in many ways, and it's deeply frustrating. And what people need to understand, laws are set up, they're designed to protect the financial institution, not the consumer. I think Bitcoin can be a helpful solution. By and large, it's a much cheaper and it's a much faster alternative globally. The case can absolutely be made and has been made for that repeatedly by not just, Bitcoin enthusiasts. Bitcoin can do something to help make some kind of positive impact in this after we all have the rug pulled out from under us.
Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you're brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart, Bitcoin Dad.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus.
And we have number 104, Christina, in the studio today. She has got a background in crypto and regulation writ large, compliance.
Chief,
making sure that exchanges are not doing the no-nos that we hear about all the time on this show. Hey, I just pulled my Bitcoin off Mount Gox. I just pulled my Bitcoin off Celsius. I just got my Bitcoin out of FTX. So I think we have a really nice insider story for you Satillionaires today. Let's start off with some rapid fire questions here, Christina. Christina, how old are you to the level of detail you're willing to share with us?
I am 41.
And where do you live?
I live in New York City.
And what do you do to mine fiat?
I started 3 years ago my own compliance consulting company. It's called Raycor Consulting. I work with fintechs of all kinds. My specialty is in crypto, and I advise companies on how to be compliant, both at the regulatory level, meaning in terms of auditors, examiners, what do you need to make sure you have in place? And then operationally speaking, what does that mean for your day-to-day? I will also step into companies and act as their fractional CEO, which means that I am not their permanent full-time, salaried person. I do it on a part-time basis until such point that they need that full-time permanent person, and then they will hire that person and I will go off and find a new client.
What would it mean for Bitcoin if the compliance and the regulation and the clarity could reach the level that, could match all the other more traditional stuff?
There would be a lot more room for innovation. So one of the problems with regulating not just Bitcoin, any digital asset, and digital assets fall under what we call in the financial service industry money transmission. They have been classified as such at the federal level and at the state level. The problem with having that hierarchy here is that you can't just say, oh, I'm licensed to exchange in the US. You have to go to each individual state that you want to do business in, and you have to submit an application, and different states want different things. And then some states, of course, I live in New York, where you have to get a BIT license. It's extremely difficult, to operate in that state. And so over the years, I've been involved in this industry since 2017. I've had a lot of entrepreneurs and people interested, in building a platform or a company, maybe it's an ancillary service of some kind, come to me for, compliance opinions, and they just decide it's not worth it to do it in the US because it is so time consuming and costly to get these money transmitter applications. So it has kind of choked out innovation to the extent that if you don't already have a lot of money, to invest in your company, or you're not already a big company, maybe overseas, and just looking to come into the US market, it's very difficult to get started here.
If I could actually just draw a quick parallel. So I'm in the consumer goods space, and what you're describing sounds an awful lot like the alcohol and spirits business and what are called dram shop laws. As you go from state to state, you've got to get licensed to distribute in each state, which gives the big players like Constellation and the other major, I'm forgetting some of the other big companies, a huge advantage, because it's really tough for anyone who's small and doesn't have the resources to go state to state to state to get themselves established. So innovation is kind of stifled as a result.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is here. And the problem is that the current regulations around this, they're designed to protect the financial institution, not the consumer. So that's a lot of the work that I and others in my industry do. We're trying to protect your assets, not, prevent you from, being innovative. And that's not really the way the laws are set up. And I think a lot of people don't understand that.
That's interesting. So as a regulator, or as someone focused on compliance, you're trying to create an environment where our generational wealth is more secure, not more restricted. And from my days in cybersecurity, I often worked with guys who, were feeling burned out because they felt like they were constantly telling their development team, no, 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 you can't do that. No, you can't build this.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt misunderstood. It's like, we're protecting you by
Mm-hmm.
focusing on by focusing on secure software development. You guys just want to build, and you feel like we're holding you back. And there's probably a lot of people in the Bitcoin and, crypto space that feel like regulation and all that's no good, but that might leave you feeling misunderstood because you're trying to make things better as well.
That's just it. I mean, regardless of who is in office, certain laws are not going anywhere. The one that I work with most frequently is called the Bank Secrecy Act. It was enacted in 1970. It's been updated since then. The USA Patriot Act in 2001 is an addendum to that law. So when you have to take your shoes and belt off at the airport, that's through the Patriot Act. Collecting certain information when you sign up for a new bank account or a new financial institution, that's also under the US Patriot Act. There are certain pillars of this law that, again, regardless of who's in office and wants to take away, certain protections under certain agencies, everyone loves this law because it's purporting to prevent money laundering, but also anti-terrorist financing. So we're still going to have some measure of regulation and certain things that are going to need to be collected and certain things that are going to need to be done to make sure, these pillars, as we call them under the law, are hit. And so what I'm trying to get, both the exchanges and then the customers of the exchanges to understand that the more that you communicate with me, whether it's, a CEO, software developer, product manager, the more that you learn my language and the more that I learn your language, and the more that you bring me into your lab when you're developing the exchange or a new product, or you want to, branch out into a new jurisdiction, the faster I can help you onboard more people and the more I can protect you against a variety of different risks. And what people, who are not the builders and are like the Bitcoin enthusiasts need to understand, to my point earlier, these guys that are building these exchanges, they care about the money. They don't really care so much if you're losing money through the platform. They're not going to take responsibility or liability for it. They're going to say, hey, we warned you. We don't have any liability under this Bank Secrecy Act. You're kind of SOL for not being, a little more cautious about who you sent money to. In addition to some of the work that I do, as a CCO, doing advisory, I also opine in legal cases as an expert witness. So, somebody who maybe has a couple $100,000 saved up in their life savings, they're a victim of one of these scams, they lose that money, they sent it through Coinbase, looked legit, it wasn't flagged, that money's gone. They're, obviously trying to get the money back at any cost. They're suing Coinbase. And then, their lawyers will bring me in as the expert, like, what did Coinbase do wrong? What should they have done to be more compliant? And it's very tricky because, inevitably when it gets in front of the judge, the defense lawyer is going to say, we had no obligation under the laws, to protect, the customers in this way. That gets into more of the legal realm of, the duty of care and whether they were negligent or not, but purely under these specific, financial crime laws, they were enacted to protect the financial institution from losing money, not from the average Joe, losing all the money in his Bitcoin account.
What's the absolute worst horror story that comes to your mind that you were, directly involved with or called in to help out, clean up?
So, we have something called centralized exchanges, which are kind of akin to, more of a traditional financial institution, Binance, Coinbase, Gemini, Kraken, all the big ones that everyone knows. But then we've got this space called DeFi, which these exchanges are not regulated. They do not fall under a lot of these laws that I've been talking about. We're dealing in the realm of smart contracts. People are, farming for tokens and trying to make quick money. I won't get into it too much because there's a lot of detail here, but this is a fast way to lose your money. So if you've got money to burn, like this is my money, and similar to taking it to a casino. If I play a few hands of poker and I'm out, I'm out, but I'm not out my house, or my life savings, then by all means. But I've seen more times than I can count people thinking they know the next big thing, the next interesting smart contract that came their way. And then, I'm going to be able to invest this money and turn it around quick and make a profit. And you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what fraudsters or bad actors on the other side are waiting for that right moment to pull the rug out from under you.
Does Bitcoin work? There are scammers, and there have always been scammers, and there will always be scammers, because wherever you have a gap between someone and the real amount of information they need to make a decision, you have an opportunity to scam them.
100%.
And the world of cryptocurrency does provide an outstanding marketplace for scammers, but so do Target gift cards. I mean, when I was working for a cybersecurity firm, I would get that text message, hey, it's me, your CEO. I can't talk right now, but I'm going into a meeting. Can you go get $500 worth of gift cards from Target? Because I want to send them out to the team to say thanks. It's like,
yep,
give me a break, right? So the world of scams is there, and people can use gift cards, people can use fiat currency, people can use cryptocurrency, people can use Bitcoin. But with your experience so far with Bitcoin, does Bitcoin itself work, or is that something that you would caution people against?
To me, it's no different than any of the other assets we're talking about. Fraudsters, the really smart ones, they're going to use the legitimate financial systems to get their money through. When you're learning about the industry that I work in, specifically anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing, we learn about, little informal networks, where people will actually bundle up cash, kind of South American drug lord style, and smuggle it, across borders. But that's not as common as we, see in the movies and stuff, especially from the 70s and 80s. Fraudsters are going through banks, and they're sending wires, and they're sending, ACH deposits, and they're sending big amounts, they're sending small amounts. Crypto gets a lot of heat, Bitcoin, Ethereum get a lot of heat because it's a newer technology, hasn't been as fully understood, it hasn't been around for a while. There's air of, anonymity. Who are you actually sending it to? Who's on the other end of the wallet? But in my personal point of view, it's the same levels of risk as like you were saying, gift cards are a known risky asset to use. Cash, if you're paying for things in cash, we're cautioned that cash is risky these days, just because there's certain safeguards in place that if you're dealing with a certain amount of cash, you're supposed to report it. I say Bitcoin is safe, but just like anything else, just be cautious. Do your due diligence on the platforms or the websites or the apps that you're using to invest or transact. Be mindful of who you're sending your money to, who you're sending the Bitcoin to. It's once it's gone, it's gone. There are organizations out there, law enforcement, and then more informal organizations that do their best to try to trace, the Bitcoin once it's been stolen or scammed off you. But it is the minute it's in the fraudster's wallet, they're converting it to something else. It's like lightning quick.
So, which exchanges do you know are good to go? If we have a Satillionaire who's like, oh, okay, well, I want to be safe when I go get my Bitcoin online. It sounded like the decentralized finance platforms don't feel good to you, but which centralized exchanges have your stamp of approval for Bitcoin buys?
I've seen a lot with all of them. No one exchange is perfect. Let's put it that way. They all have some measure of consent order or cease and desist for having controls in place that aren't 100% what they need to be. Again, always be mindful, always do your due diligence. But the big exchanges you read about, Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, whoever really has the best user interface for you, whatever app you think is, really fastest, easiest to use, least amount of hassle. Me personally, I like Coinbase. I like the app. I log in, it's my face, it's my biometric logging me in. I see right away what's going on. I get a notification if Bitcoin has gone up or gone down a certain amount. It's really personal preference at that point. I know they've got a fairly solid compliance program. Doesn't mean things won't slip through, but as long as I'm being diligent, with my money, I'm pretty assured that, they're on the up and up.
So where were you when you first heard about Bitcoin?
So I used to work a long time ago at HSBC. And this was after obviously we all know that the 2008, market crisis. So I had graduated from law school during that, and I needed to find a job at any cost. So I combined a legal degree and a finance degree and got into compliance. So I was at HSBC. This is when the banks were being fined billions of dollars for having lax anti-money laundering controls, letting money go through sanctioned countries, places that we're not supposed to be doing business with, Cuba, Syria, North Korea. And these places, the banks were hiring hand over fist because they were getting slammed with consent orders and monitorships, and they couldn't hire people fast enough to clean up the mess. But once they kind of were out of the hot water, a little bit, they kind of put, the brakes on that. And I didn't really want to be stuck siloed doing the same thing forever. So I was offered an opportunity, and I didn't know any of these terms because I do not have a tech background, but I was offered an opportunity with a company that was building what we call in compliance reg tech, short for regulatory technology. And these are platforms that are designed to help financial institutions remain compliant. So I took a position with them. They wanted somebody that had been working in-house at the banks, understood the laws of compliance, would help them build out this product, automating a lot of these processes that compliance officers have to do on a day-to-day basis. And while I was there, I started learning, things about like smart data and blockchain. There was an engineer there who tried really hard to explain to me what a blockchain was. And I wasn't getting it. I said to him, I'm hearing a lot about Bitcoin, and can you explain blockchain technology to me? And he tried his best, and it took a few more years before it really started to click. But I think that was about 10 years ago.
So let's back up for a second, because it sounds like during the 2008 financial crisis, it became clear that the traditional banking system was operating as if the laws did not apply to them. We often see Bitcoin offered up as this non-moral landscape where a bunch of do-badders are hanging out, but these big old banks are allowing money to flow through countries that it should not flow through. They are, and I've even seen even recently, even as recently as this year, you have big banks that are like, oops, you caught us allowing bad guys to launder their money through us. I guess none of us will go to jail. We'll just pay some fine that sounds big when you put it in a headline, like millions, but is like basically the change in our bank's couch to get a slap on the wrist, and we'll just keep doing whatever we want. So how can that be okay?
It's not okay, but we've all heard the term too big to fail. And unfortunately, that does apply. And it's interesting you mentioned this. I know somebody, he's also in compliance. He works specifically with Bitcoin ATM operators. He loves having this argument with law enforcement and prosecutors. Like, why are you picking on the Bitcoin ATMs all the time when billions and billions of dollars are being laundered through the banks every year? And you're exactly right. This isn't stopping, and the banks sort of build it. It's almost like they build it into their budget as a cost of doing business. Was it TD Bank was the big one this year that got caught in Canada? I forget what their fine was, but it didn't even touch the level of monetary penalty that some of the banks in 2010 through 2013 were being hit with. I was at HSBC, and at the time, I think that was the biggest fine. It was 1.2 billion. And, I was a cog in the machine while I was there. I certainly was not at a high level to see what was going on, but even at, my lower meager level, I was still seeing stuff that I was surprised was going through. So yeah, this is definitely a very sensitive topic, but one of my, you're asking crazy things I've seen. One of the cases that I was working on, not last year, the year before, was the estates of some of the Epstein victims were going after the banks, saying you had lax anti-money laundering controls, and a lot of this human trafficking money, and money from other illicit gains was going through your system. So I was reviewing tons of documents, in these cases, and higher ups at the bank, the relationship managers, just kind of turning a blind eye to stuff because, hey, this is a whale and we don't want to upset him. So that's at a much higher level than people necessarily letting money go through to Mexican drug cartels. But the principle is the same. The whole bank is too big to fail, and they just sort of built, like, if we're going to get the slap on the wrist, if we're going to get the monitorship, if we're going to get the fine, if we're going to get the consent order, we'll build it in. We will, try to make it look like we're doing better, to pass these audits. But the level of care, like, oh wow, we really care enough to change the culture of compliance here, I've yet to see that change anywhere.
Christina, it sounds like you're saying that the banks are looking at things and saying, you know what's good for business? You know what's great for our bottom line? Crime. Like, yeah, I bet we could make $100 billion helping out criminals, cartels, you know, opposing nations. And then our nation will be like, hey, that 100 billion you made, that's not okay. You owe us $1 billion. And they're like, okay, here's your money, boss. And they're kind of like patting the American government on the head, like, that's right. Yeah. Oh, whoops. That's our bad. That's our bad. And our vision and our mission is to do better in the future. And they're just fully not.
They would disagree with me vehemently, and this is just my personal opinion based on what I've seen in my anecdotal and limited experience. But you would think that, if people were really learning their lesson, why would we keep seeing all these fines in the news?
But Christine, so these same people that you're describing are also in control of the money supply, right?
Yeah, the more money you have, the more power you have, the more fast and loose you can kind of play with the laws. Um, I don't like it any more than the next person. It's deeply frustrating. It's deeply systemic. Again, I can't say everybody is bad, but the system is broken. The system is broken in many ways, and it's not just more expensive groceries. It's a financial system where the few protections that are in place for consumers, they would like to take those away too.
So here at Sat Chats, I mean, we recognized a long time ago that we have to work for money that the government and banks can just create for free. And we have a problem with that. And we think our audience should have a problem with that. But we don't want to just talk about the problem here. I think it's important, but we also want to offer a solution. And our solution to getting out of that broken financial system that we offer is Bitcoin. Do you see Bitcoin as a solution to this broken financial system? And if so, how?
I think Bitcoin and, other digital assets and even tokenization in general can be a helpful solution for anyone, kind of reading the news with the something called the Genius Act was just passed, having more regulations around stable coins. I mean, when we're dealing with assets, and if you're sending, just to keep it very simple, instead of taking money out of an ATM and being charged for that, instead of going, overdrawn on your account by a few dollars, then being smacked with $30 fee, by and large, sending crypto is a much cheaper and it's a much faster alternative. So it is definitely something to consider, as an answer to a lot of the problems we have with the traditional financial institution. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm sure at some point, they'll figure out some way to, make money off of people in this sector too. Um, I don't really know what that will look like, but I promise you they're thinking through that, banks wanting to issue, banks wanting to get more involved in crypto where they were, kind of shying away from it a few years ago as it being a riskier asset. Who knows, they might start, wanting to charge more prices for sending, Bitcoin, other digital assets. Um, but digital assets, as just part of the broader tokenization landscape, it's one particular use case, Bitcoin, like being able to transmit and receive value through this token, this asset, and taking away, some of these predatory practices that banks have. There's a larger, push globally, not just in the U.S. We're so U.S. centric here, to tokenize a lot of things. Real estate. I've heard that in India is a way to, provide more of an ability to make money for people. They're trying to even tokenize like farmland, basically like everyone kind of owns a piece of this land, and through this token, whatever they're calling it, you know that you own a piece of this farmland. There's a lot of use cases out there for the technology, the underlying technology of Bitcoin, that I think are fascinating. It's something I'm trying to learn more about. I'm certainly not an expert in this, but I think, this world that we're coming into where people are paying more attention to, things like stable coins, certainly, Bitcoin or whatever your digital asset of choice is, it is, a current answer. And I can see why things, why applications and platforms that maybe rely on, decentralized finance where there's not somebody kind of overseeing what's happening. I can see the appeal of them because people are so disillusioned with the traditional financial system. And we're always hearing, pull yourself up by your bootstraps or work harder. People are working harder than they ever have before. Everyone's got 2 or 3 jobs of some kind. No one's relying on just, the same old 9 to 5. Um, but the goalposts keep being changed on us, and how are we supposed to account for that? So yeah, I mean, when people ask me my personal opinions on Bitcoin, I'm a very casual, investor. I invested a little bit to kind of see what would happen with it, but just as a use case in general, I think it can do a lot of good, both for listeners in the U.S. but also on a global scale, where other countries certainly have incredibly broken financial systems and horrible rates of inflation, where people get their paychecks and they get pennies on the dollar for what they actually made.
We have the black box of the nation state that is going to create money. We've got the black box of the bank that's going to create money and move money around and not care whether it's good money or bad money because they're making enough money to pay the fine. You even have the black box of our gold, which is like, is it even still in there? What if I made the case for you that Bitcoin is the most compliant form of money on earth? I mean, when you look at Bitcoin, it's like, hey, how does the federal government operate? Well, we're not so sure. How do the banks operate? What are they doing? We're not sure until we catch them doing something wrong. Bitcoin's like, oh yeah, here's my source code. You can review absolutely all of it. Bitcoin is also allowing you to inspect every single transaction since the beginning of all Bitcoin time. And you have 22,000 plus compliance officers that are reviewing Bitcoin's activity every 10 minutes, back to the beginning of all Bitcoin time. Every 10 minutes, it's fully audited by thousands of compliance officers, right? In the form of our nodes. If I am a compliance expert like you, and I'm looking at a broken system, forget cryptocurrency, forget tokens. I mean, there might be some value there, but my focus is on Bitcoin because it's the most compliant thing I can think of, right?
The case can absolutely be made and has been made for that, repeatedly, by not just Bitcoin enthusiasts, but legislators and compliance officers as well. Because what other type of products do we have that have something like the blockchain, where you can go in and find all of this data and this information and have it so readily at your fingertips? So you are definitely making a case that I have heard before and that a lot of people are a fan of.
Well, there you go.
If Bitcoin has proven itself as peer-to-peer digital cash. It's an excellent store of value. You can price things in it. It's infinitely divisible. So it's equipped to power the world's economy. But going back to my first, point there, it's peer-to-peer digital cash. In a world where we have access, where everyone has access to peer-to-peer digital cash, what do you need banks for?
If that is the system that we have, then ultimately you really don't at that point in time. If that's what we're transmitting and we don't have to worry about, on off ramp, that's really what the banks are needed for, at that point in time. Because in some countries they do use it as peer-to-peer cash, and that's what they're paying with. In the US, it's mostly used, as an investment vehicle. So people are wanting to on and off ramp it. But if that was the global system, that would take away a lot of these problems that we do have with banks. But, being the pessimist that I am about the powers that be and not the technology specifically, I would not put it past them to try to find new ways to effectively get their hands on people's hard-earned money.
Yeah, we can't let them do that. We cannot let them trick their way into a relevant future. I mean, it's just they do. Okay, one last question. Do
Chris was like, yeah, that was a great answer.
Do banks make the world a more compliant place or a less compliant place?
Oh my God, my guy's on the attack.
I mean, that's a tough question. As a lawyer, a case can be made for both sides of that question. But seeing a lot of what I have seen instances, where banks have been helpful to help people get their money back from fraudsters. So in that instance, like, I don't want to say definitively, like they never do anything good, but by and large, they do tend to make life and things more difficult. I mean, as a millennial, the 2008 recession was supposed to be a once in a lifetime, event. And that was, gosh, I don't even know what year we're in, how many years ago, and how many unprecedented once in a lifetime financial crises and events have happened since then. So yeah, as somebody who graduated law school during that time with every intention of, walking the path that you think you're meant to walk. You graduate law school, you get the summer associate job, you become a partner in a law firm. That was all ripped away from me. Getting into compliance, was equal parts, I need a job and I have to pay bills and I have to figure that out quick. But also a little bit, I'm kind of sick of this mess, and I'm one person, but to the extent that I can do something to help make some kind of positive impact in this after we all had the rug pulled out from under us, I would like to do that.
Let's go. Let's go. All you millennials in our audience of Satillionaires, smash the subscribe button. If the traditional financial system and the traditional system writ large has rug pulled you over and over again throughout your entire life, because that's absolutely what's happened. Okay.
It makes me so mad. So mad.
I mean, we've had the rug pulled out from underneath us over and over and over and over. And it's terribly frustrating. It's terribly frustrating. The Satoshis inside the Bitcoin network are here to stay. They are a compliance darling, okay? Chief compliance officers worldwide all have a deeply loving, approving attitude toward Bitcoin, because Bitcoin doesn't require your trust. You can trust Bitcoin because it doesn't require your trust. The source code, here you go. The transactions, here you go. Anything you want to know about Bitcoin? Sure, it's right here. It's right here.
It's pristine, baby.
Pristine. Amazing. All right, so let's recap the conversation here with Christina. She is a millennial like the two of us. She did just like I did, by the way, and graduated with an advanced degree into a financial recession that meant we had to take whatever job was available to us at the time. Okay. She graduated with a law degree and was going to go be on that pathway that she had been told was available to her, and had to squibbity whoop, let me braid it together with some finance degree in the background and go ahead and I guess what I'll do is, since the mess the banks created for me has taken away my job opportunities, I'll go take a job cleaning up their mess. Bro, wow, the bank spilled everything everywhere and everything of mine got ruined. I guess what I'll do now is help them clean it up. Okay. And you had to get your career started in a way that you did not expect. And you were exposed at these big banks to what are their blatantly not legal practices. Because if they can just make enough profit breaking the law, then they will be able to work it out in the end, because we can't break the law, but they can. We can't print money, but they can. We got to work for it. They can just make it up. It's completely busted. You told us yourself the system is broken. And, you know, we focused on how the world is full of scammers, pig butcherers who will fatten you up by text message and siphon as much money from you as possible until they finally come through to slaughter the pig for the maximum amount possible and move on to the next one. You talked about making sure that you know who you're speaking to, you know who you're working with, you know where you're sending your money, if you're sending it anywhere at all. And if you're doing any of those things, you should think long and hard. If someone texts you and says, hey, I need $500 in gift cards, babe, you can call your wife and say, okay, you just asked me to send you $500. Are you sure? No, I'm not. I'm getting my nails painted. I didn't send that text message at all. It's like, okay, I got you. Right? Like, you know, I think we got a general message from you to be safe out there in the world financially. And Chris and I made the case that the safest place for you to operate is not the traditional banking system. It's not cryptocurrency or tokens, whether that has some value or not. It's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is transparent. Bitcoin is compliant. Bitcoin is performant. Bitcoin is the greatest.
Pristine, baby.
And every 10 minutes, there's 22,000 to 50,000 Christinas who are making sure that the last 10 minutes of activity have in fact been compliant. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, Christina, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Bitcoin, when it comes to finance and compliance. We aren't going to be able to, we'll never fit it all into a single chat about sats. So, we ask each of our guests if they would be willing to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Let's absolutely go. I really feel like your area of expertise can be dry for the everyday person, maybe a little complex or inside baseball. And it's like, oh, okay. So wait, based on this one piece of legislation that was enacted in 19, I can't do it. It's like, ah, but we do, if we want to become more fully realized individuals, if we want to become better providers, if we want to be able to provide for ourselves, we need to understand this area that you are in. And we want to continue to dig in on that as you come back on the show. So I'll turn it over to Chris here.
All right, Christina, you're in New York City, so I'm not sure if you've heard of Ithaca hummus or not, but today we've got the roasted red pepper flavor here. I believe you chose that on your intake form. And Stuart and I are going to have a taste. Now, have you heard of the brand before?
I have. I've seen it at the market.
Yeah, but have you gotten any yet?
I have. Is there a garlic one?
Yeah,
there's a lemon garlic.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I've had that one. That one's pretty good.
Okay, awesome.
Let's go.
Well, we're going to taste the red pepper here.
Okay, let's go. Cheers.
Yep. It's the best hummus around.
That's in compliance with my taste buds.
Comply. Yeah. 15, maybe. All right. So as a small token of our appreciation for your time here today on Sat Chats, we get to offer you your choice between $50 or $50 worth of Bitcoin, which Stuart has pre-calculated as 42,200 sats, or $50. What's it going to be?
I think I know the easy choice. I'm going to take the Bitcoin.
Yeah. Let's go. Yes. So you heard it right there, Satillionaires. Christina chose compliance over crime.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for stacking the sats with us here today, Christina. You bring our show's scoreboard to 96 who have stacked the sats, along with 8 who have chosen the cash. Is there anywhere you'd like our Satillionaires to go in order to engage with you online, or maybe even grab some of your compliance consulting services?
Yes. So my website, it's spelled RAYCOR consulting. So all one word, raycorconsulting.com. You can go and find out more about all the different services I offer. I also spend too much time on LinkedIn. So if you go and you look for Christina Ray, my last name is spelled REA. You can engage with me there. You can send a message. Let me know your thoughts. I'm starting to get more into the world of AI, so would love to hear anyone's thoughts in that space as well.
Outstanding. We will put that information in the show notes for our Satillionaires. If you are someone who wants to come on our show, satchats.com, grab your slot the same way Christina did. If you are a Bitcoiner who wants to help Chris and I mint the next brand new Bitcoiner, you can send Satoshis to our on-chain Bitcoin address in the show notes, or you can zap us on the Lightning Network, satchats@getalby.com. If you are a sponsor and you love what Chris and I are doing and you want to be a part of it, you can email us show@satchats.com. I'm proud to report that we are now seeing some interest from sponsors. And if you want to be one of them, contact us now. Remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Compliance alert, yeah, we do it, okay? Christina was like, I can't wait till the end of this episode. If they don't give that disclaimer, I'm about to pop them. Okay? But we have it built in, okay? We're compliant over here. Also, our guests' views are their own. We will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.